Hi Year 9, today we're going to be talking about chords. This follows on from the intervals lesson that you did last week. In intervals, remember that we look at the scale of the bottom note in order to find out whether it's a major interval, or if it's a fourth and fifth, it's a perfect. If they belong in that scale, if they don't, if they're a semitone lower than they should be, they become minor, or if they are perfect fourth or fifth, they become diminished straight away. Remember all of this? And if they are stretched by a semitone from that original diatonic scale, they become augmented. And that should help you with today's work on chords. Now, a chord, what is it? Well, essentially it's two or more notes played together at the same time. And there's lots of different variations of chords. Of course, the most obvious are consonant and dissonant. Consonant meaning that they sound nice and they will have that gap between the notes. So, for example, play one, miss one, play one, miss one, play one, like we've talked about all the way through Key Stage 3. So, for example, C, we play, miss out D, play E, miss out F, play G. Gives us a consonant chord. You can hear it sounds nice. Now, if we then put the notes together like a cluster and we kind of scrunch them together, that becomes a dissonant chord. So, for example, C, D and E. If I play those together, it's still a chord, but can you hear it's a dissonant chord? Actually quite a nice scrunchy chord, but in fact dissonant because it hasn't got that gap between them. And I've just written those up on here. So you can see a consonant chord here is on all the lines because the spaces are missed out between. These ones, can you see they're clustered together? We have C, D and E all scrunched together, creating a dissonant chord. Okay, so consonant and dissonant. Now, going a little bit further, we have variations of chords. We have the four main ones, major chords. You recognise these names from the intervals as well. We have minor chords, we have diminished chords and augmented chords that I want to cover today. Now, it's very easy for you to say, you recognise orally a chord, a major chord, by saying it's a happy chord, and a minor chord by saying it's a sad chord. That's quite a cliche. Let's go a little bit further. A major chord is made up of a major third at the bottom, between the bottom and the middle note, and a minor third between the middle note and the top note. So if we take that in the context of C major here, okay, so we're looking at this chord now, we can see that C to E, if we think about this bottom note like we did with the intervals, C, in the scale of C major, we have an E natural. So that would be C, D, E, a major third, because it belongs, this E belongs in the C major scale. So major third. Now, let's look at this note now, because we're looking at the interval between these two notes, and therefore we have to look at the bottom note. So that is an E. Now, let's think about E. Is it a sharp or a flat key? Well, we know it's a sharp key, because it doesn't sound like a flat key, so E major is a sharp key. So that means we need to go down a semitone from E to find the last sharp, which is D sharp, and then its father Charles goes down, meaning that E major would have F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp in it. So the scale will go E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Now if that's the case, then this G should be a G sharp if it was going to be in the scale of E major, which would make that a major third, but it's not, is it? It's a G natural. That's a semitone lower than it should be if it was in the scale of E major. So it's not a major third, this is a minor third. And can you see how that's proved? This is a major chord. A major chord is made up of a major third from the bottom to the middle note and a minor third from the middle to the top note. And let's just play that, you'll hear. Okay, so we've got the major third between the C and the E, and then we've got the minor third between the E and the G, the middle and the top note. And if I was to put the top note on top, another note, you can hear how it is actually a minor chord, okay? So C to E is a major third, E to G is a minor third, making a C major chord. Now, if we were to just change one note of that, i.e. this one here, can you see now what I've done? I've taken that middle note, instead of E natural, I've made it E flat. So I've made that a semitone lower than it was initially. Now that's changed things a lot, because now this interval, the bottom and middle notes, is a minor third, because it's now a semitone lower than the E that belongs in the C major scale. So this is a minor third. And what's it done to this one? Well, it's stretched this interval because it's made it a semitone lower. So now E flat major has battle ends plus one more and. So it has G natural in the scale, which means this is now a major third. So now we have the minor third and the major third the other way round, which creates a minor chord. A minor chord has a minor third and then a major third. So it's the opposite to the major chord. Now just listen to that. C, E flat, which is the minor third, and E flat to G, which is the major third. If I put that together, you hear your minor chord. Okay? So let's just kind of go over that once more before we go on to the other chords. So a major chord between the bottom and the middle note is a major third, and between the middle and the top note is a minor third. Okay? Making, all in all, a major chord. A minor chord has a minor third, and then on top of it, it has a major third, and all in all, making a minor chord. Okay? And really, it's only, you'll have noticed, it's only the third of the chord, i.e. the middle note, that is different. In the major chord, it's a semitone higher than in the minor chord. Okay? Alright, so hopefully you've got that. Let's just do a few of those, just to make sure. No, let's go on. Let's do diminished and augmented first then. Okay, so now these chords are less common than major and minor. A diminished chord has a really, really fantastic dramatic feel to it. It's the sort of chord that you'd use if you were trying to create tension, suspense. And the reason for that is made up of all minor thirds. Okay, so now if we think about that in terms of C major, C here. Here we've got the C that we had originally, and now we want a minor third, so we're going to use that same minor third as we did in the minor chord. So C to E flat, because C to E natural will be major, C to E flat is minor. Now this chord here, this interval here between the middle and top note also needs to be minor in a diminished chord. So instead of the G natural of the E flat major scale, we need to make it a semitone lower, so we make it G flat. Okay, so our chord is now C, E flat and G flat, all minor thirds. And let's hear what that sounds like. Can you hear that? That dramatic sound. Now there's also a thing called a diminished seventh chord, which just means you'd add the seventh note above that. So we've got the first, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, which would be an A natural in this chord. And that's a diminished seventh chord, and that's used in a great deal to create that suspenseful feeling. I say that's diminished chord, all minor thirds. Now finally we look at the augmented chord. You can probably guess what it's going to be is all major thirds, because it's augmented, it's stretched. So the C to E that we had initially as our major chord, sorry I've done a little mistake there, I've put in a sharp, glad I noticed that. C to E is a major third, so that's all fine as it was in the major chord here. And then E to G natural would have been minor, so we need to make E to G sharp to make it major, because E major has a G sharp in the scale. So that becomes a major chord. So C, E, G sharp would make our augmented chord made up of all major thirds. So we have C, E and G sharp. Can you hear that's also got a funny kind of suspenseful feeling, but I think that's more of a question mark. It's like the cliffhanger. So an augmented chord. So let's just go through once more. We've got the major chord. Major chord is a major third and a minor third on top. The minor chord is the minor third first and then on the major chord on top. The diminished chord is a minor third with another minor third on the top. And an augmented chord is a major third with a major third on top. Okay, so hopefully you understand how we can get all those. Let's now then try a few by looking at the ones here. So let's try and work these out. I've so far done them all in C major, which has made this slightly easier for you, but let's move on now, meaning that we'll have to know our scales key signatures. Right, so this is notes. Let's give you a bit of time to just work out what those notes are in treble clef. So hopefully you've realised that's a D, an F and an A. Now, if this is a D, remember we're working out this interval between the bottom and middle notes to start with. In D major, we know it's a sharp key, so we go down a semitone from D to find C sharp, Father Charles. So it's F sharp and C sharp in D major. Now this is an F, we know. So if we wanted this to be a major third, this would have been an F sharp, wouldn't it? Because that's in the scale, but it's not, it's an F natural. So it's a semitone lower than F sharp, so this makes this a minor third. Okay, here we've got F and A. So we're looking at this note now as the scale. F major is that funny one. It's not a sharp key, even though it doesn't sound like a flat key, but it does have one flat, B flat. We've just got to remember that. So if B flat is in the scale of F major, everything else is white. So A belongs in the scale of F major. So this is a major third. So a minor third and a major third. So you should be able to say, right, that is a minor chord, and the bottom note is the one that's giving it away because they're all bricked up in thirds. So this is D minor, okay? Hopefully you got that. Now let's look at this one. I'll give you a bit more time and hopefully you can work this one out and shout it out. So we've got all the notes here, E, we've got a G sharp, and we've got a B, okay? So we're looking at this bottom note, which is E. We think, right, okay, that's a sharp key. Go down a semitone from E, what do we get? D sharp. So Father Charles goes down. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp in E major. So yes, G sharp is part of the scale, so that makes it a major third, okay? Now let's look at this one, G sharp to B. Now that's a funny one, G sharp major, isn't it? What I'd do for this one is I'd probably put both of those, because G sharp major doesn't really exist. If we put both of those down a semitone and put G sharp down to G and B down to B flat, we'd see that in G major it would be a B natural. But this, if it was going to be B flat, that would be a minor third. So we put them both up a semitone again, we see that's a minor third. So that's a major third between E and G sharp and B is a minor third, which makes this, that's right, a chord of E major. Super, right, his spon's been rubbed out a bit here, but it should say E flat, G and B flat. Now E flat major, flat key, so we use all of the flats leading up to the tonic flat plus one more, so battle ends plus one more, and B flat, E flat and A flat. So between E flat and G, which should be that note there that's rubbed out, we can see that G is in the scale of E flat major, so that's a major third. And the scale of G is a semitone lower, it's F sharp, so it's G major, it's only got F sharp, so B natural would be in the scale, but this is B flat, and that's a semitone lower than B, so this is a minor third. So a major third and a minor third, this is E flat major. Okay, this one here, we've got an F. In the scale of F major, we know there's B flat. The rest of the notes would be white. So to have an A flat, we know that that's a semitone lower than it would be in the scale. So that makes it a minor third. Now A flat major would have battle, ends and down. So C natural does belong in the scale of A flat major. So this is a major third. So a minor third and a major third makes this a minor chord, makes it F minor. And then finally, let's look at this one. This is a G flat, a B flat and a D. Now, G flat major's got battle ends and down goes Charles's, nearly all the flats, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat and C flat. So B flat does belong in the scale, so that's a major third. And then in a scale of B flat major, battle and ends, there is a D natural, so this is also a major third. So two major thirds makes this augmented, and it makes it G flat augmented. I'm just going to play you that one. There we go, can you hear that augmented? Now, hopefully you should be able to stop and pause the video if you get a little bit stuck. Just have a bit of time to muse on it. Of course, email me if there are any problems at all, and there should be some help on the worksheet. I'm just going to do one more thing whilst we're here, and this is really to challenge some of the others if necessary. We're just going to talk about inversions, okay? Oh, actually, no, let's go back to the chords and the major key. By using all of that information that we've just talked about, we can also see that in a scale or in a key signature, in a major key, for example, if you use all of the notes diatonically, then, i.e. using the notes that are in that scale, then you should always end up with the same chords for each degree of the scale. And I'm just going to explain what I mean by that. So, in C major, remember that we don't have any sharps or flats, all white notes. Okay, so there's the chords built up on the root of each of the degrees of scale of C major, D, E, F, G, A and B, okay? Now, if we were to work all these out like we've just done, it would turn out that C is a major chord, D is minor, E is minor, F is major, G is major, A is minor and B is diminished. Now, I'm just going to explain that, look. So C major, this is D minor because that would be F sharp if it was going to be D major. E minor because this would be G sharp if it was going to be major. F major, G major, A minor and B diminished, because B to D is a minor third and D to F is a minor third. Let me just play you those. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor and B diminished. Can you hear that funny chord there? B diminished. Okay. Can you see how I have labelled these chords? We always label chords with Roman numerals in music. The chords that are major chords are with capital or uppercase Roman numerals. The ones that are minor are always with lowercase Roman numerals. And you see this diminished chord is a minor chord because it's made up of minor thirds, but it's also special because it's 2 minor thirds, and so it's got this little circle here which means diminished. Okay, so that's how we label those chords. And in a major key, even if you were to put this in D major, and you had D major, D, F sharp and A here, the next chord would still be E minor because there's no G natural, and so on and so forth. So you still end up with chords 1, 4 and 5 being major, 2, 3 and 6 being minor, and 7 always being diminished, as long as you stick with the notes in the key, major key that you're in. Okay, now the final thing then I'm going to talk about is inversions. Now you've noticed that so far we've had chords that are all built up in thirds. Okay, like this. So we've always had the root of the chord at the bottom. Okay, so that's not always the case. If I take a chord like this, for example, can you see now my chord does not go up as all lines or all spaces? Okay, it's got 2 lines and 1 space. However, this is still an E, a G and a C. It's still the notes of a C major chord. If I was to kind of pile them up until I got them into an order where they all made either spaces or lines, I'd see that C is actually the bottom note. Do you see that? So if I pile them up, I've put the G there at the bottom, it still doesn't make all lines or spaces, but if I go up one more, C, E, G, there we find that C is the bottom note. And that's how I find out what chord it is. So it's a chord of C major, whether it's got the C at the bottom, the E at the bottom or the G at the bottom. It's still the notes of C major, i.e. play C, miss out D, play E, miss out F, play G. But we can't label it as such. We could still call this, if we were in C major, we could still call it chord 1. That would be absolutely fine because it's the notes of C major, C, E, G. But we cannot call it 1 on its own. If it was a root position chord like this, i.e. really easy to recognise because it's all lines or all spaces, an octave higher here, we could call it 1A. We don't actually have to label a root position chord. We just take it for granted that if it hasn't got a letter here after it, it's just root position. Okay, but here we've got the middle note, the E, the third of the chord, at the bottom. Now this is called a first inversion chord. So we actually label that 1B, which means that it's still chord 1, C major in C major, but it's not got the C at the bottom, it's called 1B. Now if you're a guitarist, you might often see the chord written like this. C major, oops, not G, sorry, C major / E, which means you play the C major chord but with the E at the bottom, and that's probably actually quite a more straightforward way of actually seeing this chord, but in music theory really should be labelling them 1B. So hopefully you understand that. Now look at this one, still notes of C major, C, E and G, but the bottom note this time is a G. It's the 5th of the chord, C, D, E, F, G, yeah? So we'd label it in guitar music like that, C, G, but is actually what we call a second inversion chord of C major. So we call that chord 1 in C major, 1C. Okay, so that's how we use inversions of chords. I'm just going to write a chord here and see if you can recognise it. Okay, so now this chord, first of all, we need to pile it up until it's all lines or all spaces. Now if we take this bottom note, which is a D, we keep the G and B where they are, put the D up the octave. Can you now see that we've got them all on the lines, which means that this is a root position chord now, and we know the bottom note is a G, so this is a G major chord. So both of these are G major chords, yeah? It's just they're in different inversions. This is a root position chord, and this is not. So in C major, C, D, E, F, G would be chord 5, look like up here. So we call it chord 5, both of them are chord 5. This one's 5A, but we don't need to label it 5A because we take that for granted if it's in a root position chord. This one, however, we do need to label. Now, if we were doing guitar, we go, right, okay, it's chord G, but slash, what's the note at the bottom? Oh, a D. So that's a G chord slash D, meaning the D is played at the bottom of the chord. Has a different sound. But as a Roman numeral, this is not a root position chord, so it's not A. It's not got the third of the chord at the bottom, which would be B, and actually is a B as well. But it's got the fifth of the chord at the bottom, which in this case is the D. So it's not A, it's not B, it's chord 5C. It's a second inversion chord. Now please do not worry if that little bit at the end is a bit confusing at the moment. It will sink in gradually. We'll do this over the next year and you will understand it perfectly. But it's just a little extra on the end for challenging the people that have already done a lot of music theory. I don't want them to be standing on their laurels. Okay, or resting on their laurels even. There's going to be a worksheet on Google Classroom now to assess your understanding of this video. I hope that's helpful to you. Hope it's self-explanatory. If not, please just email me. You know that I'm around all of the time for questions, and hope you get on well with that, and we'll see you soon.